Good evening, bonsoir. Bienvenue à la séance publique du 17 novembre. Welcome to the regular public meeting on November 17th. Please rise for the national anthem. So we'll do territorial acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge the city of Bathurst as the ancestral homeland of the Mi'kmaq. Today, these lands are home to a diverse population of Indigenous and other peoples. We also acknowledge with respect the diverse histories and cultures of the Mi'kmaq in this region. Nous reconnaissons avec respect l'emplacement de la ville de Bathurst en tant que terre ancestrale du peuple Mi'kmaq. Aujourd'hui, ces terres sont hôtes d'une population diverse, comprenant personnes natives et autres du territoire et autres patries. Nous reconnaissons aussi avec respect l'histoire et les diverses cultures du peuple Mi'kmaq de la région. On va aller à l'approbation de l'ordre du jour. Madame Parker.
Que l'ordre du jour soit approuvé comme présenté.
Parfait. Est-ce que je peux avoir quelqu'un pour proposer? Conseiller Legacy, secondé par conseiller Scarry. Prêt pour la question? Tous en faveur signifie en disant oui. Contre non. Motion adoptée. Ms. Parker, do we have any declaration of conflict of interest?
No conflicts of interest declared.
Okay, we're going to go to the adoption of the minutes, l'approbation du procès verbal, séance ordinaire publique tenue le 3 novembre 2025. Ms. Parker.
Que le procès verbal de la séance ordinaire publique datée du 3 novembre 2025 soit approuvé comme distribué.
Parfait, j'aurais besoin de quelqu'un pour proposer. Conseiller Branch, secondé par conseiller Anderson. Prêt pour la question? Tous ceux en faveur signifient en disant oui. Contre non. Motion adoptée. I'm going to go to consent of agenda. Présentation du public et de l'administration. Public and administrative presentation. Status of the utility network and recommendation by Mr. Matthew Abernathy, our city engineer. I will give you the mic, Mr. Abernathy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Je vais faire ma présentation en anglais à ce soir. Si jamais il y a des questions du public, ils peuvent m'appeler certainement à l'Hôtel de Ville. Certainement ouvert à répondre à quelques questions que le public a, mais à ce soir, je vais faire ça en anglais, c'est correct. So tonight we're going to be presenting our utility operations budget and capital budget. And so kind of as a preamble to that, I'd like to go over a quick discussion about the types of budgets that we have, some of the reasonings for what we're going to be recommending tonight, and kind of the status of the utility network. So before I begin, I'm just going to kind of go over the difference between our general fund and our utility fund, so the public is aware. So the general fund covers our day-to-day operations of the municipality that are funded primarily through property taxes, fees, and grants. So this is the things that your property tax goes to is your road work, your police, fire, snow clearing, facilities, waste management. Anything that isn't water and sewer related is covered by our general fund, which is funded by grants and property taxes. And contrary to that, we have our utility fund, and our utility fund is what we're talking about tonight, in my presentation anyway. And our utility fund is solely our water and sewer systems. So our utility fund is used to manage the operations of self-supporting municipal water and sewer utilities, where users pay directly for the service they receive. They include water treatment and distribution, wastewater collection and treatment, system maintenance, monitoring, testing, and compliance. And it is solely funded by user fees. So property taxes, grants, government programs do not cover the utility budget. So it's very important to understand that if you are connected to the water and sewer system, that it is paid for solely by your user fees, and that's it. It's the only way that we can fund the system, okay? And so within the utility budget, we have an operating and a capital budget. So operating expenses, just like any other business, is their daily operating expenses, their day-to-day costs, which are covered to keep the business running. And then we also have our capital expenditures, which are long-term, big-ticket items like major buildings or major plants or major renovations that are kind of a one-time cost. And usually those costs are there to either improve the service or lower operating costs in the long run. So we'll be talking about both operating expenses and capital expenses today because they are two completely different things. All right. So starting off with operational expenses, our operational budgets at the City of Bathurst have seen increases year over year. Just like any other expense, that we see increases from 3 to 7%. Usually in industrial sectors like this, you'll see that the increases are usually a little bit higher than inflation. So between 3 and 7% is usually what we have for increases. And there's only 3 ways in which we can account for those cost increases. We can either sell more water through development of different housing or businesses. We can reduce operating costs, which is something that we've been doing for my whole time here anyway, and it's something that we strive to do as well as we can, or increase the price. There's only 3 ways to account for operating cost increases, and those are the 3 ways: sell more water, reduce operating cost, or increase the price. So many years of cost reduction measures have left the department unable to complete regular maintenance, and declining water quality has been the result. So over the last number of years, we haven't had enough development in the city in order to sell more water in order to cover our cost increases. So we've had to increase water rates as of late. Prior to that, there was a very steady water rate in the City of Bathurst. There was very few increases, and staff were basically asked to make cut after cut after cut in our operating expenses in order to balance the budget, right? And what that led us to is a deterioration of our maintenance systems, and in our daily operating have been underfunded over the last little while. And so now we're looking to steady that a little bit. So our operational expenses from 2023 to 2024, our hard cost increases were 6.8% of our budget. So when I say hard cost increases, I'm talking about things that we don't control at all. So things like insurance, power. MB Power had a rate increase of 11.5%. We can't control that at all. We can't use less power. It's a hard cost increase that needs to be accounted for somewhere in our budget by one of those 3 things I talked about: selling more water, lowered operational costs somewhere else, as in doing less maintenance, which is how we've been accounting for all of these cost increases. So keep that number in mind. 2023, 2024, hard cost increases were 6.8%. Just the things we can't control were 6.8%. So since increases are inevitable, we recommend implementing a minimum 2.5% annual increase for a 5-year period in order to ease the burden of major spikes. And the reason why we're saying that is because increases are inevitable, and we're at the point now where if we reduce operational costs, I'm not saying there aren't efficiencies to find, there always are, but I think we are doing a very good job as being as efficient as possible, and I don't think there's any more room in the operational side of things to lower costs, so we need to ensure that we cover those increases over the coming years in order to avoid having to do a major spike like a 15, 16, 17% spike like we've had to do in the past just to balance the budget. So what we're recommending today on the operational side of things is a 2.5% increase for next year, and also a commitment from council to commit to doing that for the next 5 years. And what we're going to be able to do with that operational increase is a lot of work that should have been done, some of it 20 years ago, that we cut out of the budget because the expenses weren't there. So you see our valve replacement program there for $60,000. There's valves there that are 70, 80 years old that need to be replaced. They don't work at all. We have difficulty isolating certain areas of the city. Our sewer flushing program, we see the severe increase in grease being deposited in our system. We need to catch up on taking care of that. We're putting some measures in place through bylaw enforcement to try and reduce the amount of grease that's being dumped as well, so that we're taking the proactive approach there as well. But the damage is already done in a lot of spots, and we need to get that flushed out. You'll see our UDF program there, which we need to get moving again a little bit more next year. We have our water treatment plant clear well isolation valve maintenance. These are valves in the holding tank at the water treatment plant where the clear water is held before it's pumped out into the system. Those valves have not been touched in 30, 40 years. They don't operate at all anymore, and so they need to be fixed so that we can maintain that clear well and make sure that our clarified water stays in good condition. And then we have our water treatment plant blue algae action plan. So essentially we need to reduce the amount of nutrients that are going into our reservoir because we are having accumulation of algae. It's a bit of a climate thing. It's a bit of a development thing. But we need to act on blue-green algae before it becomes a problem, because if we wait too long and we don't act on it and it becomes a problem, it will cost us millions like it's costing the city of Moncton right now. And so we're looking to get out ahead of that with a $30,000 investment in that. So these are just a few things that are in dire need to be done, and they can't be done if we don't put these price increases in place. So just a quick note to the public: we do track water quality in the system. We have a comprehensive testing program. We have various locations in the city that are tested 4 times a week. So all of our numbers are in compliance: our chlorine levels, our turbidity levels. What we don't see are whenever there's events in the system, things get stirred up, and the public get dirty water. In those situations, the public usually call us and let us know. We've been seeing a significantly less amount of calls, and we just want to make sure that we're not getting those calls because the water is in good condition because we have been doing our job, or if the water is still dirty and people have just kind of given up calling because they don't feel like anything's being done. We're losing that public feedback and we're not getting that information anymore. So I just wanted to put a call out to the public to ensure that if you do have dirty water and it's not accounted for by a voyant alert message of, we're flushing in the area, there's a construction project in the area or something like that, that we really would appreciate a call to let us know, even though, we may not be able to do anything about it, but at least we do know where there are hot spots in the city and we could focus on those. There have been some that popped up over the last few years and we've tried to address them in kind of a more pointed fashion. So a call to the public to ensure that we do need your feedback still, so if you do get dirty water, please give us a call and let us know. So moving on from operating to capital. Excuse me. So for capital expenses, the City of Bathurst has a water and sewer asset total value of over $130 million, and some of our assets are well over 100 years old, 110, 115 years old. And so our yearly utility capital budget is $750,000. So just doing simple math on that, your asset renewal rate is 175 years. If we look at that as our replacement value, obviously there's extra money that can be put in there through the feds and the provincial government, but our reinvestment in our assets is $750,000, and that will account for a rate of 175 years before things get replaced. Obviously, that's not ideal. If you include inflation and auxiliary cost of renewal, like having to rebuild a road and curbs and everything else whenever you do pipe renewal, you're looking at 300 years before you turn over your streets. Obviously, we can't allow that to continue. We need to bring this deficit down. At some point, we need to reinvest in our assets. And so, I promised last year that we'd be getting our asset management on the go here for this year's budget, and this is some data that we were able to pull out of that. So we have all of our utility piping, our water and sewer piping in our asset management program. What you see here is a little bit of a busy slide, but it basically gives you snippets of every year of how much of the system is expired. And when I say expired, every pipe has a lifespan. Typically, cast iron, ductile iron pipe, concrete pipe has a lifespan of about 60 years. So after 60 years, that pipe is considered zero value, and what that pipe costs to replace is added to our deficit. As in, we have a pipe in the ground that's worth nothing, it needs to be replaced. It costs $1 million to replace that pipe. We have a $1 million deficit, okay? So In 2026, the total value of pipe in the ground, which is of zero value, is $10,800,000. Every year, there's more and more piping that expires because we're not replacing, we're not reinvesting in our system fast enough to replace those pipes before they expire. And so you'll see the cumulative number there increase. And the cumulative number from 2026, 10 million, to 2036 is 100 million.
And we're already 130 million.
Well, 130 million is the total value of your assets.
That's it, okay.
Okay. And so by 2036, the deficit, the amount of assets that we have that will be worth zero, is 100 million. So you can kind of correlate that to the water quality that you have in your system. So right now we have a deficit of 10 million and we have a certain level of water quality. Once our system reaches 100 million deficit, your quality is obviously going to go down because your deficit is getting higher. The value of assets that need to be replaced, they've outlived their life, is now 100 million. So we're going from 10 million to 100 million over the next 10 years, and the reason for that is the City of Bathurst really experienced a large boom in the late 60s and early 70s, and there was, in today's dollars, there was like $100 million worth of pipes that went in the ground between 1965 and 1975. And so that's being reflected here at that all of those pipes are becoming zero value in the next 10 years. And so it doesn't mean that they're all going to explode all of a sudden at 60 years, but it's an indicator of how old our system is, essentially. And the older a pipe gets, the more it deteriorates, the more problems you're going to have, right? And so our utility capital investment strategy, in order to try and catch up with this, is we're proposing a 2.5% capital investment increase per year to be placed in a utility capital reserve to fund utility pipe replacements in order to get the city back on track. So this is a separate 2.5% from the operational 2.5% that we talked about earlier. 2.5% operational was to cover day-to-day costs. This is to cover asset renewal. It's to cover reinvestment in our system so that it doesn't deteriorate over time. So other municipalities are already on board doing this. There's many municipalities across Canada that have already committed for 5 and 10 years to do asset renewal and to be more sustainable. And essentially they're doing that because they understand that this decreases cost overall. It reduces interest payments. You're paying with cash instead of debt. If we were to go ahead and do all this work and just borrow every single time, we would still have to pay for it. We just have to repay it over debt, but we would have to pay interest on top of that. So we're doing it this way. There's two benefits. We don't have to pay any interest, and we're also prepared to go out and get infrastructure funding whenever the government offers it. We have the money available. We can put, we call them shovel-ready projects. We have the money available. We just need the funding from the provincial and federal government. We can go ahead with the project in the following year. We can design and away we go. Whereas if we have to go and borrow the money, we have to wait until February of the following year to get approval. It stretches the whole process out an extra year. It slows everything down. So having the money up front is certainly better for those two reasons. And the third reason why it's much better to do this is because the latest round of provincial infrastructure funding is weighted based on how responsible municipalities are with their asset management. So we just had a webinar last week of how they're describing how infrastructure money is being dispersed to municipalities in the province. And the way they're doing it is not by population, it's not by size, it's not by any of those things. It's based on the net book value of your current assets. So the more current assets that you have that are worth zero, those don't count towards your funding. So they are rewarding municipalities who have been responsible and have replaced their assets over the years and who have kept their assets in a newer state and kept a book value of those assets on their books. Whereas we're falling behind and we have a large amount of our infrastructure which is of zero value, which means it does not count towards our piece of the pie when it comes to provincial funding for infrastructure. So it obviously puts us at a pretty significant disadvantage because we've gone so many years without reinvesting in our infrastructure. It's essentially a motivation for cities to do their part and invest in their assets. So the provincial and federal government are leaning more on asset management and responsible reinvestment in their assets for their dispersion of utility money or infrastructure money. So very important to keep that in mind as well. We need to do our part here is essentially what they're letting us know. So what can we do with that money? Essentially 2.5% over our budget is not a huge sum. It represents in the first year about $185,000 or $187,000. So we would be looking to take that money and put it into our capital reserves. And then over time, that money would grow to where we could actually do something with it. And so I have here listed as 2026, we can't do anything. 2027, we can't do anything. And 2028 is when we finally have enough money, if we go ahead with this program, to be able to start rebuilding streets. And then in subsequent years, we can that money continues to build and we can continue to do more streets. So we have streets on here like Melanson, Notre Dame, Main Street, Riverside Drive, McDonald, Evangeline, Laurier, Grange, Douglas and Queen, Levesque, St. Mary's, Mont Carmel, Victoria, Coffin, St. Mary's. Right now, we don't have any plan to do any of these streets. And I think all of you probably know what kind of shape, first of all, those roads are in, but the infrastructure under the ground are even more of a concern, as some of them are, like I said, well over 100 years old. Right? And so having this plan in place along with provincial and federal funding, we'd be able to start tackling some of those streets without having to borrow and pay interest on that money.
Mr. Abernathy, before you go to the next page, just for the people following on social media, so let's use Melanson as an example. Mm-hmm. So to rebuild Melanson would be $2,625,728.
Exactly.
Our portion that we would have in use from the rate would be $866,490 if we were approved for funding.
Exactly.
So it's still a $2.6 million project, mm-hmm. but we also need our share to be able to move forward to apply for these. And without the funds, we cannot go forward with any of these construction works.
Exactly. We're still reliant on 66% funding from the federal and provincial government. If that's lower, then there'd be more on our part that would have to go in. We might have to wait another year, but that's all up in the air. We don't know what's going to happen in 2028, but we do know that we won't have the money to do these until 2028 unless we go ahead with this program.
Okay.
All right. So here's a graph showing what our deficit is. I spoke about that 10 million going to 100 million over the next few years. That's that red line. Okay, so that's our infrastructure deficit if we continue on the path we're on right now. And you'll see it continuing to go up and to the right. That's not good, right? So this is extrapolated out to 2050, but in 2050 we're reaching 160 million in infrastructure deficit. And what you see with the blue line is if we do go down this path of asset renewal and asset reinvestment, and you'll see in 2040-ish that curve starts to come back down a little bit, and we start to actually lower our deficit. And we're getting a little bit of help there from the fact that we're now installing PVC pipes, and we've been doing that for a number of years now. PVC has been shown to have a lifespan of 100 plus years, so that's helping our case in the long run. But right now we do have all of that infrastructure in the ground. That's cast iron. That's the worst kind. But there's also ductile iron, which is only a lifespan of 60 years. So that's why you see that continue to go up. So there is some relief in the long run now that we're using PVC pipes. They have significantly longer lifespans, so things do look good on that front, but we don't see a reduction in that deficit until 2040-ish, 2041-ish. So just to recap our recommendation here, our recommendation is a 2.5% operational increase and a 2.5% capital investment increase for a total of 5% per year, in order for us to begin the long journey back towards sustainability and to allow staff to sufficiently allocate money for operations and maintenance, maintain or improve water quality, and rebuild local distribution and collection networks. Now, this does come with an asterisk at the bottom here. We've been talking a lot about pipe tonight, and that's really all this program covers. We also have our water treatment plant, our wastewater treatment plant, our booster stations, our lift stations. None of those are included in this. So if we do have any major projects that need to happen at those facilities, we will need to borrow the money because it'll be a long-term borrow. We will need to pay that back. We will need to pay interest on that. So that will be, we'll have to find additional funds at that time whenever we do have those projects. So obviously we would do those in conjunction with infrastructure money from the federal and provincial government as well. But just to keep everything in mind, 2.5% increase in capital and 2.5% increase in operational is not going to fix everything for us. We also have facilities that are going to need reinvestment as well. They are aging, and they're going to need some help as well.
We have a question from Councillor LeBlanc.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yep, of course.
Councillor LeBlanc.
Yeah, this might be a little bit premature, but so in that last one though, the asterisk does not cover the renewals. I'm guessing there that neither does it include the new builds that are happening and that are going to be here within the next year, 2, 3, 4, with the new apartment buildings and everything.
Yes,
This will
correct.
increase our tax base, right, which could help towards that.
Not the tax base, the user fees for water and sewer.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
sorry, that's
Yeah.
where I was hinting. And the other one, that 5%, that was included in the budget numbers you gave us, right, Sonia? Okay, all right, just keep going.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
So just to wrap up, it's not fun to come up here and ask for extra money. We're sympathetic to the public for sure. So we want to make sure that everybody's clear on what this means for their bill. Obviously, everybody has a budget at home that they need to maintain. So this is what our monthly rates would be if you were to pass this tonight. Our current water bill per month in the city of Bathurst is around $70, I think, $70.10 or so per month. So we'd be looking to increase that to $73.63 for 2026. And just for comparison, I have Fredericton's rates there as well. Their monthly rates for 2026 are $89.43, and they're going all the way to $108.70, whereas in 2030 we'll be going to $89.49. So we're looking at about a $3.50, $3.60 per month increase in 2026, and then by the end of the 5 years, we'll be looking at almost $4 or just shy of $4 worth of increase, or just over $4 an increase per month between 2029 and 2030. So that's what it looks like for your actual water bill, $73.63 as opposed to $70. Of course, all of the rebate programs which were offered last year are going to be offered again this year. I believe I'll let Sonia speak to those later, but that's the picture that we're painting this year. So if you have any more questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Councillor Burnett?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Thanks for your presentation. Not real good news, but I was away in the weekend and our water tastes much better than what I was drinking in the city. So thank you for that. But what about all the new areas that we've taken in that mandated by the province? And this year, a lot of people experienced dry wells in the outlying areas. Doesn't look like we'll be able to service them in the very near future if they go dry again, which they're predicting over the years. So what do you see for the outlying areas that we've taken in, like Lone Pine subdivision, for example, has been taken in? The First Nations project out in Vanier, they want to expand that. Can we provide water there for that?
Thank you, Mayor. So we are providing water to the First Nations development already. They are connected to the system, but to speak to St. Anne and Lone Pine, we've looked at connecting both Lone Pine and North Tettigush. It's all doable. There's significant investment that needs to be made. There's some storage tanks that need to go in, and then obviously the pipe in the ground to connect people. There's a lot of work that needs to be done inside the houses to connect them as well. So we're talking about tens and 20 of millions to get that done. We looked at Lone Pine and North Tettigush, the most populated areas of North Tettigush, and we're looking at about 25 million to get that service. And the annual revenues, which we would see on that, would be about $860 or $870 a month per household. So obviously, there's no real business case there for that, unless federal government and the provincial government chip in. Then it's certainly doable, but it's a significant investment to get them hooked up. If people's wells are going dry, I think it's probably a need that definitely needs to be brought to the provincial government and discussed at that level, and something that we can make happen for sure. It's definitely doable. Yeah.
Thank you. My next question: we have a lot of property around town that is serviced and not being used. Do we ever take a check on that to say we could offer some sort of an incentive for people to build on the lots that already have water and sewer going by, rather than develop a new subdivision and have to go in?
I think that'd be a little bit more of a question for Chris Legacy, but I think it's certainly an option. We encourage development as much as we can, for sure. Yeah.
Because we looked at that before, and it was important to infill.
Mm-hmm.
We did offer incentives for people to do that. I think we took that away. So maybe it'd be something to look at it in the future, Madam Mayor.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
I know when years ago when we did Yohal, because I lived down Yohal, and we had a community well, and that's like, 15, 20 years ago. And the municipality, they went through the water and sewer, but I think I had a fee of $6,400 plus my frontage connection. And then I did a 5-year payment. You could do a 10-year payment plan, and I was paying per month to pay. But let me tell you, my community well, my spaghetti would turn gray, but I was so happy to have city water when it came in. I had no issues paying that extra fee, and this was a way by each resident being able to pay for it. And Councillor Anderson, because you lived down there as well? Yeah, and but I mean, now I'm so happy to have city water. Back then it was completely different.
Local improvement would certainly be part of the conversation in any one of those projects as well.
And it worked extremely well because it went all the way down to Queen Elizabeth as well. So, Deputy Mayor Knowles?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a comment here. I think it's clear to everybody here that the infrastructure deficit didn't start this year or last year. It's been going on for decades, and it's catching up. So we have to address it. It's not fun to recommend an increase at all, like even for myself. But I think we're at the point we have to do this, or we're going to be even in more trouble if we don't address it now. Keep it as the increase as moderated as possible. Yep.
All right. No other question or comments. Thank you, Mr. Abernathy. And thank you for having such a clear presentation. It's you can't get any more simpler than the information that we're seeing right now. And even from our last presentation that you gave, citizens were sending me emails or sending me a message, and I would actually tell them where to go listen to on social media, and at what minute to what minute. So for me, instead of spending time explaining everything, if they could take the time to go review it, and they would come back and say, couldn't I? Because it's clear as mud, as we normally say. Bon, on va y aller à le résumé du budget 2026 par Madame Gauvin, notre trésorière. So 2026 budget summary by our city treasurer, Ms. Gauvin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I thank you, Mr. Abernathy, because anything I can say tonight will be more positive than anything he just presented. That is the best. That's my best start to any budget I've had in 7 years. So with what Mr. Abernathy just presented in mind, so we have to keep it up all night long because it will come back in my presentations, unfortunately, where we will make the loop of how it connects. And tonight we are very happy to present the full budget that emanated from all the working sessions with staff and council throughout the past few months. So just a reminder, Mr. Abernathy did just a really good job at summarizing all the 4 funds. It's not like a private company where we have one single budget. We have 4 budgets that talk to each other in some respects, but are completely different. So as Mr. Abernathy said, we sometimes hear the comments of, I pay enough taxes, I pay high taxes, why do I have to pay for a separate bill and I still get brown water? Your property taxes are not paying for your water or sewer bill, and you're not receiving a sewer and water bill if you're not receiving the service either or have access to be connected to that. So, for example, when the municipal reform happened, a lot of people were scared that all of a sudden they were going to get a water sewer bill, but they were having personal wells. You're still not having a water sewer bill if you've never had one in the past. It really is if you have access to a connection to the water, and those are it's a really separate company, as though we had an electricity company that was completely on the side. So we have the general operating fund, which is really yearly operation, maintenance, salaries, electricity, and all of those. And then we have the utility fund, which solely, in our case, takes care of the water and sewer. We have some municipalities that do have electricity fund, like at Menson. So for them, they have a third one. And then each of those, we have the long-term investments for the capital. So the general capital fund and utility capital fund. So all of those are separate companies that some way work well together, but still need to be viewed in 4 different companies. So to this year, we had key objectives. So obviously the first section with a balanced budget, that's mandated, that's legislated. We always have to keep it in mind. But for the city of Bathurst, we always work on the sub 3 because we can have a balanced budget but not be financially responsible. We could do that, but we would never do with that objective in mind. So we always target maximize efficiencies anytime that we can, where we can do things differently and improve. And then we always have optimized opportunities. If we see something that's occurring that we could grab the opportunity to, we will seize that. And we want to be sustainable. And sometimes we forget the definition of being sustainable. And sustainable means that whatever we do today should not impact future generations. So we're not going to do something that the next generation will have to pay for, and then it's just going to accumulate. If you look at where we are today, all the pipes that were put when Mr. Abernathy mentioned, we are now, from what was done 50, 60 years ago, we are now the result of those decisions that were made back then. Great, nice booms, but it wasn't spread properly in the implementation, and now they're all breaking at the same time, and it's not sustainable. Where a lot of municipalities now are very much in debt to try to keep up with that, but then it means that this generation is paying for infrastructure that was used by our parents or grandparents. So we don't want it. So right now we are paying for that. We are resolving that, but we also don't want to do the same thing to the next generation. So it needs to be sustainable, because if it's not sustainable, in 20 years we simply won't have services for citizens, because we won't keep up with how it's going. Obviously in 2026 we were also able to use a strategic plan, and I bought a copy because just in case citizens at home don't know, we do have a strategic plan since 2025, and it's going right up to 2027. And you'll see that in this year's budget, we really were able to take items from this budget. And for staff, it really makes it easier, because we always do projects, we always do things, but are they what the priorities are for citizens and our municipalities? So a lot of work was put in this strategic plan by council members, citizens, and consultations and all of that. And now we know the roadmap of when we put money, we are putting it where the priorities are. So this was a big step up from what previous budget that made things a lot easier. For the third objective, of course, we had as objective to maintain the level of service, considering that the assessment freeze for 2026. I don't know the states of other municipalities, but I know for ours, if we did not have the fiscal support funding that we will show in a few slides, or if we weren't already being sustainable in our ways of doing it, if we hadn't done things in a certain way for the past 5 years, we would have had to cut either services or increase tax rates. This is not the case for us. So we were very, very lucky. So the main focus when we started doing the budget, when we heard about assessment freeze, is how can we do it in a way that we are still able to maintain the level of service for citizens. When we look at capital budgets, you'll see that we focus on roads, recreational infrastructures, and supporting protective and transportation services. And you will see, as was presented, that we are investing in the utility fund today so we can drink safely tomorrow. It is very, very important that we don't wait until we get all those boiling orders and all those difficult conversations when we're in it. We need to prevent from having them completely occurring. So total budget, what does it really look like? For this year, we have a whopping $53,812,413 proposed budget, where $40.7 million would go in the general operating fund. The water and sewer operating fund would be at 8.8, the general capital fund at 3.6 million, and then the water and sewer capital fund 750,000. You see millions everywhere, and then you get to the capital and get to 750,000. That's because although we do have the increase proposed, integrated in the budget, it's being put aside so that it can accumulate and grow so that we can do larger project for citizens. So more specifically in the general operating fund, one of the highlights is, of course, the assessment freeze. What does it mean for us? Well, normally we would get 1.8 million in increased value for property values, even though we were, some properties were capped at 10%. With the latest booms we've been seeing in the past 3-4 years, we would get around 1.8 million in increase. That would cover the inflations that are typically occurring everywhere for our services. However, with the freeze instead, it was translated into 1.1%. Normally it would be between 7 and 8%. So this year was only 1.1%, which translates to 259,000 additional revenue from property tax rates. That money is solely for properties where either constructed a new property or had major rebuilds or renovations, which means that they would have had to have a building permit or sold their property. So those are the only instances where people will see different in their assessment. Everybody else that just had status quo for their property is supposed to have the same assessment with the same tax rates that we will be showing later today for Ward 1 more specifically, and that gives us 259,000, which means typically compared to what we'd have, it's $1.5 million less. But we were lucky for our municipality. The new fiscal capacity funding that replaces the equalization grant was 4.6 million, and our equalization grant in previous year was 3.3 million. So it gives us 1.3 million more money than we would normally have, which compensates a little bit for the assessment freeze. So that's the only way we were able to do the budget that we have today without cutting services or increased taxes. And then, of course, the strategic plan. So for the strategic plan, in the general fund, we have these 4 targeted pillars. There are 5. But in the general fund, you will see the economy, you will see governance, and you see integrated mobility, and then as well as community. For economy, we are targeting for 2026 3 different items. And the first one is adopt an economic development plan. So we have $100,000 for consulting fees for the study that was targeted in the strategic plan. And we will also facilitate the redevelopment of the former mill site, because recently, as was just announced, there is funding from the Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund for Bridge Street rebuild near the mill site. And so this is a 2025 budget, but 2026 project. We also encourage population growth by creating a welcoming environment to enhance population and retention. And as you can see in the police staffing budget, we have community officers with targeted programs, so prevention programs for youth in schools, newcomers, and elderly. So they will be as much as possible within the communities and not just stopping people on the roads, but really integrated in the community as much as possible. Development side, of course, we have the Housing Accelerator Fund that started 2 years ago about. We have $859,000 that is left for 2026, and so we will be completing those incentives as part of the Housing Accelerator Fund program. In governance, of course, as part of regional collaboration in all aspects, we participate in community group. We have a lot of staff that are implicated with the regional service commissions, associations, many other local districts, and this is a part of their daily work allocations. Continuous corporate improvement. The CAO of the municipality has a budget of $50,000 to allocate to different continuous improvement budgets. So if there is an opportunity in any ways to improve, because we said that we would maximize efficiencies, that we would look at opportunities, those continuous improvement, that little bucket can serve for a lot of things and put in place a lot of things. We have $30,000 for data gathering for cost of and lifespan allocations. that would go toward the implementation of the strategic asset management plan. So it has started. Mr. Abernathy has collected a lot of data, but we need to continue that. So there's a $30,000 allocated for that for him to continue. Then we have to ensure that the city is compliant with municipal reform legislation and adjust bylaws. And as such, we have not yet done the legwork, the real legwork for the municipal plan that is legislated. So we have $100,000 that is put aside toward the municipal plan for 2026. And then, of course, right now we have the branding exercise that is going on. So then it's all the branding signage and all of the having the new municipality of Bathurst that includes Ward 1 and Ward 2 as a single whole. We have the branding signage all over. So the Welcome to Bathurst signage and all of those for $175. And then we have organizational restructuring. That is no cost, simply as a project for implementation 2026. Then on the integrated mobility side, of course, everybody knows that the airport is always in a little bit of difficulties these past few years, and we want to make sure that we support them as much as we can. And so we have a financial guarantee. It's not budgeted because it's only a guarantee that should they need it, we would look into a reserve, but we always have that into the forefront. So if we do need to guarantee, to use that guarantee, we have $360,000 that we always keep in the back of their mind. Then support bus services. We have the public transit with the RSC, which we see a lot in the news lately, and I think they've ordered the buses. I think they've started hiring bus drivers. There's a lot of going on. So we have $221,000 toward the bus services. So that will be moving along in 2026. For a safe and accessible mobility network, in the strategic plan, it says to collaborate with Bathurst Police Force to improve problem areas based on current best practices. So the police staffing is to identify a risk zone and put in place targeted operations to better road security. So they will be working on that in 2026 as part of their initiative. And then the traffic calming policy, they will also be working on looking at targeted areas and see how they can promote and reduce speed and have efficient transportation as part of their work plan. So as you can see, the police are really trying to do their best. If we can recruit enough police officers and have the plan that they really want to accomplish for the community, it's more than just police officers stopping people. It's really them being part of the community. Which brings us to the community pillar, which is safe community. And that one is the biggest part for the police department. So we have enhanced the visibility of uniformed police officers, and this one is specifically in the downtown core. So we have a recruitment budget in the HR section of $136,000 to find more police officers for full staffing. Allocate employees to downtown core, so this will then be in their mandate. We have also in the fire department an implementation for a fire prevention strategy. So them too, they will also be as much as they can in the community and put fire prevention strategies. So we have a new position for a fire prevention officer. So we have $122,000 there. If you've seen in the social media lately, we have launched a volunteer firefighter recruitment campaign. So we do have $60,000 allocated for fire volunteers. And then we also want to support our protective officers by providing mental health support to the city's emergency staff and volunteers. So mental health pilot program for $45,000. And then we have adapting our services to new realities and trends, allocate employees to work with social services, community liaison, and other community partnerships. So this is also something from the police department. In healthy community, we have, of course, our recreational department with the wonderful work they've been doing in the past years. So we have adopt and implement a recreational master plan, and in that recreational master plan, they recommend that we update the Coronation Park master plan because they do have one, but it was due for review. Instead of just building stuff in the park that doesn't necessarily meet the needs of where we are today. So to ensure to be fiscally responsible and invest in the proper assets in the park or fun stuff for the kids and maybe for parents, I don't know. Oh, there's a $75,000 to be there to put the money in the right spots and have a plan going forward. Arts, culture, and heritage. We have the Support the Reimagined Old Post Office. There is a grant for $20,000 in the budget. And that brings us to the total separation of the budget. One by, as you can see, 34% as usual. Every year, it's our biggest portion goes to police, to protective services. But really, when you look in the big categories, we have the general government services at 17%, which has $7 million budget. And in there, you have the legislative services, administrative services, financial management, common services, and other general services. And that includes expenses like administrative staff. You have council expenses, insurance, and then the continuous improvement we discussed. It also includes the recruitment fees for the police officers and mental health program in the HR budget. Then on protective services, you have the 34% I just mentioned, and that is $13.8 million. That includes the police department, fire department. We have the bylaw officer department and the animal control. Those are all in there, as well as dispatch services. So it is quite, when any municipalities or organizations that have protective services, it will always be your highest fee in your budget. When you come to transportation services, we have 17% of the budget, and this is one of the sections that is divided into Ward 1 and Ward 2, because your tax rate can only pay for the services that are delivered in your community. So Ward 1, which is the old city of Bathurst, the staff from the engineering department is responsible for their roads, paving, clearing the snow, and all of that. However, Ward 2, which was priorly managed by the province, which is now with the city of Bathurst as one, the province is still taking care of those roads. So whenever we see investments in roads that stop sometimes at the old city limits, you're not getting you're not getting any pave because the province is responsible for that pave, not the road that stopped beforehand. So your tax rate, you're not paying for that in your base rate. So when Ward 2, when they get their property taxes, they get two rates. They get one from the city of Bathurst, and then they get an additional one from the province, which typically is 41 cents, that gets added to it for the services that the province renders on their behalf. And so transportation is one that is specifically divided. So you have road surfaces and you have snow removal, those kinds of services that are only charged to the tax rate of the old city of Bathurst, but then you have street lighting, for example, that would be charged to every municipality because they do get the services and they do get the bill. So this one is particular for that. Environmental health services has 1% of the budget. This is garbage disposal and garbage collection. And there's a decrease in the budget compared to 2025 because there's been efficiencies in that section. Then we have environmental development services at 6% of the expenses at $2.5 million. And that holds the planning and zoning services, rentals, community development, economic development, tourism, and decorative lights. Then this means you will find the consulting fees for economic development as well as the municipal plans. So we had $100,000 consulting fees for the economic development plan, and we have $100,000 for municipal plan that are part of that line. Then we have the recreational services is proposed at $5.2 million with 6% of the total budget. And as you can see, it jumps from 2025, which now has $5.1 million instead of $4.5. That is mostly because now we are owners of the aquatic center. So before we had an expense to just simply give a grant of $630 for 2025. But for 2026, we have their full set of expenses. However, we also do get the revenues, and they net at about the same amount. But we do have the full set of expenses for that, as well as the $75,000 for the Coronation Park study we just talked about. In fiscal services, for 12%, for the 4.9 million that is shown here. We have the debt charges to reimburse old debt. That comes to 2.1 million. Then we have 365 for sick leave and retirement and bad debt allowance, which is part of the liabilities that we have to put away every year. But the real positive comes from the transfer to capital, where we are able to transfer 2.3 million to the capital fund to purchase long-term investments. So instead of borrowing and paying interest on it and getting leftover money, we are able to transfer money cash and buy directly, and have a lot more flexibility as a municipality to not be dependent on getting authorization for which project we're doing, or can we do this because we have to be requesting the money as a guarantee to the province. We have full range as a municipality to come to council and say, okay, are you in agreements of doing this projects, or if there's a better way, switching it to another one. So we are a lot more flexible and get a lot more for our money. So this comes together at 4.7 million versus 38.7 in 2025. How do we pay for that? Well, we have the local taxes, 250,000, which is a tourism accommodation levy, which is directly reinvested in tourism initiatives within the community. So that one is a nice bonus for any municipality to have, because it is a give back directly. And then we have 2.5 million for services provided to other governments, and these includes fire services to other surrounding locals. So fire services, they do go to St. Anne, and they provide fire services. We do have dispatch services that dispatch for BNPP and for our own local, but also fire services and 911. And for sales of services, fines, and other fees, we have the revenues from Casey Irving, but new to the city's budget, as we just mentioned, we now have the revenues from the aquatic center that are part of that, and that's why you see the jump in the sales of services. And then other revenues from owned sources include the revenues from building permit, but also the interest generated from having a positive bank account. So we do generate interest fees with our bank accounts. And altogether, it comes to $614,000. Then we have the other government transfers, which pretty much almost of it, not all, but most of it comes from the HAF, so the Housing Accelerator Fund. The incentives that we are granting, we do get money from the federal, and we have a little bit of federal programs in there for student programs in the summer. The other transfers for 1.9 million, we have in there the surplus from 2024 in the amount of 692,000, but we also have the surplus from the aquatic center for 165,000. So they did a surplus in 2024, and when we are consolidating all the assets, this comes back to the city, and so as part of the transfers, that's included into that amount.
Madame Gauvin, just for, again, people on social media, the surplus for the KCI, that's money that we had given them a few years back in case they needed it and they ended up not needing it. So they don't necessarily have a surplus. It's just, it's funds we gave them, right? Correct?
Yes. So it's for the aquatic center in 2024, we had given them an additional grant because if they had come to a surplus, it would have had to be paid as a deficit in 2026. So we had given them money in advance in 2024. They did not need it. They happened to kind of almost break even, and now it's just simply coming back. But I can tell you that for 2025, we are absorbing an expense because they had a deficit in 2023. So it's just that we put the money ahead in prevention of it. Yes. The other part is for the transfers that we are going to take money out from the reserve, because in 2025, we plan to put money in before the end of this year. And we are hoping to get money out in 2026, which will allow us to maximize money for long-term investments, which we will present when we get to the capital budget. Then we have the conditional grant for 4.5 million, which is the new fiscal, the new equalization grant funding that we are receiving, which used to be 3.2 in 2025. And then the property tax warrant, we expect to generate 20.5 million out of that, which provides us the revenue to cover the expenses. and brings us to this total budget. So I won't go through this table, but as you can see, expenses and revenues are now divided between every subunit, how much are shared, how much are local, and how much are specifically to North Tetegush and all the other local districts that are part of Ward 2, and how much are for Ward 1, so the old City of Bathurst limits. And as you can see, the only thing I'll highlight is that, for example, if you take North Tetegush, the first column of numbers, there's more expenses than total revenues. Same thing for the other local districts. There are more expenses than there are revenues, but however, when you get to Ward 1, you have more revenues than expenses. That is because we are using transitional funding where we have 6 years to give the time for the shared expenses to be covered for Ward 2. You can't go from what they would have paid in year 1, so they have 6 years to get to the rate as a transitional years to be able to cover their portion of the shared expenses. So in the meantime, Ward 1 is kind of giving a transitional funding, and so this gap reduces every year, but 2026 is year 4 out of 6 until it gets back to where it will be. Which brings us to the proposed tax rate. Ward 1, which is the old City of Bathurst, we propose the no change in the tax rate at 1.7550. It had decreased 2 cents last year. With the assessment freeze, of course, it is recommended that it remain the same. For North Tetegush, we recommend the increase to 96.76 cents. And South Tetegush, St. Anne, Big River, Route 134 beyond, we recommend the increase to 95.90 cents. And those increases are part of the municipal reform transition. So it's not because we are all of a sudden just increasing for Ward 2 because we choose to increase for Ward 2. It is part of the transition that we are starting year 4 out of 6. So there will be increases for year 5 and year 6 as well until the transition is fully complete, and then it'll be up to the next council to decide what they want to do, but this is simply part of the transition period. Utility fund. So highlight aging infrastructure, long-term renewal plan. Mr. Abernathy quite laid the groundwork for that. We also had the strategic plan and water and sewer proposed rates. So in the utility fund, oh shoot, it went out. Sorry. In the strategic plan for the utility fund, we do, oh no, it started back. I'm sorry, I'm going to make your head spin a little bit. I'm almost there. There, okay. So we do have the environment pillar in the utility fund. And as Mr. Abernathy presented, we do have specific investments, and the investments for the 2.5% operational increase that he mentioned. So the water distribution network, UDF for 30,000, valve replacement program 5,000. All of the projects that Mr. Abernathy presented are part of the strategic plan under the watershed protection. So he's not just making things up. It is not just he chose these projects because he thinks it should just be done. It is part of the strategic plan. And in there, he didn't mention it in his capital portion, but we do have a capital project of $520,000, which is the intake gallery rebuild that we will show into the utility fund. Then we also have a $10,000 for the sewer study. So we have the pre-project costs where we have a testing to locate infiltration and inflow issues and reduce flow at the wastewater treatment plants. So we do have that from the strategic plan on the sewer study side as well. On the expenses side, as you can see on the water supply, we really do have a lot of investments in the past years. Every time we look at the actual expenses, so we make a budget and we distribute everything, and then we notice that mid-year there's so many investments needing to be done in the water supplies. We do savings in the wastewater disposal because we have to put more in water supply. So we are putting a lot of money to water supply because the need is very much there. So the budget for specific water is 3.5 million for 40% of the budget. Wastewater disposal, 29% of the budget at 2.6 million. And then we have the water and wastewater system debt charges, so 2.2 million of the total 8.7 million goes to pay for old infrastructure. So when Mr. Abernathy says that our infrastructures are old and outdated, we're paying 2.2 million per year in reimbursement of those old debt. And we still are only able to invest 750,000 in capital, but a lot of that money is simply going to reimburse old debt. So it is taking 26% of our budget instead of going straight for new pipes, new infrastructure. So we are trying to shift that. We've been working at that, but we have not been as lucky as the general fund, where we have been able to make leapways, invest a lot more money. But with what we're proposing tonight, we're hoping to start in shifting that with the years. Then we have transfer to own funds and reserves, so 4%. We have money that we put into our emergency fund, so the operating reserve fund, but because we're limited at 5% of the previous year's budget, it doesn't give us much. It's about 450,000, 500,000 in emergency fund. When you have pipes that are so old and cost so much to repair, it's not a big emergency fund. So we're trying to put more into prevention instead and invest more into our capital. So we have $47,000 that is for the federal agreements that we have every year mandated by the federal government. But with the 188,000 more that will be generated from the 2.5 capital investment increase proposed by Mr. Abernathy, we are hoping to build up that fund. So that is part of that increase that you see there. We are trying to work on that. And then other fiscal for 110,000, 1%, that is to repay previous year deficits, because of course we have been missing revenues to cover expenses and we had deficits to cover. So that brings the 8.8 million for the 2026 budget for the utility operating fund versus 8.1 million. So let's talk about the rates. It's not fun to talk about it, but it is part of where we are. And it is part of a lot of conversations that are happening in a lot of municipalities. If you just go research, in a lot of municipalities' budgets, they do have to talk about it and come up to a plan. So we have the 2.5 operational increase, where Mr. Abernathy will be able to work on maintenance, not just him, but his team. And then we have the 2.5 capital investment increase that was presented by Mr. Abernathy as well. But we are trying to have stability in the system for at least the next 5 years. That in the resolution we are asking council to just maybe give their involvement and say 5% total per year for the next 5 years, to try to have foresight and stability for staff to say, okay, have this to kind of coming, and I can gauge my work to go that way. And I don't want to minimize the impact of what that means for families. Everybody has bills. It's been increasing every year. But we are at a point where if we don't pay for those increases, we might not have safe water to drink. So we need to invest now and have a moderate increase in the invoice, because if we don't have that moderate invoice, the cumulative of this, in 10 years, you will have a major spike in your invoice. It will go for this to this instead of going at moderate pace. So it's not because we enjoy increasing rates, it's because we are trying to save from having major spike and then solve a problem instead of preventing it at maybe twice or 10 times the cost. And so the monthly increase that this represents is for a residential family in a regular household having both water and sewer. It translates to $351 per month. So I know that when we talk to people and we say 5%, it seems like a big hike. But it's not the same percent. When you add a percentage on an electricity bill or other types of bill, it can be quite a lot. But for us, it means $3.51 per month, which is equal to 2 coffees, or if you like the flavor, the specialty ones, maybe a big specialty one. But it's about $3.51, and we're at that point where if we don't deprive ourselves of that 2 cup of coffee, we might not have safe water at all. So we do need to make those investments.
We have a question from Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question, Sonia. non-residential places, businesses, hospital, whatever, will they incur a 5% increase to their metered rates?
So we are suggesting 5% across the board, residential as well as non-residential. So we gave the example of $3.51, but as you can see, and I won't go through the numbers, but for every table, but just to show when we get the utility bill, those are the numbers that you will see for residential rates. And depending if you have only water or just sewer, you might have a different from the table. So it's a yearly increase for the 1 unit of $42.08. But then when you get to the non-residential, then you get those new sets of rates. So they would also get the 5% increase. However, I'm not going to go through that, but it depends on the size of the connection that they have and the number of gallons that they use. So for the total, if they get water and sewer for non-residential, for hospitals, commercial properties, or all of those, they would go from $17.79 per 1,000 imperial gallons, because they are still metered, to $18.68 per imperial gallons, and then depending on the connection.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. For revenues, of course, we have what we've been talking about, sale of services. So for the 2026 budget, we have $7.9 million in sales of services compared to $7.3 in 2025. So it seems like a big increase with the 5%, but from the starting point, we had additional money because we were selling more water already. So we do have development in the city. We do have, with the Housing Accelerator Fund, developments for units that are coming in, and we are selling more water to commercial properties. And Bellevue as well have been buying more water in the past year, because they also do have development. So it's not like we're just charging increased rates and not making effort to sell more water. We are actually able to sell a little bit more water, just not enough to cover all the increases. So the number that you have there is because we are selling more water plus 5% increase in the recommended rates. Then we have other revenues from own sources. $500,000 of that is for the charges that is charged to the general fund for fire protection services for all the fire hydrants and the water. And then the rest of that is really connection fees and all of the other services that we can render. And then we have prior year surplus. We have small surpluses. In 2 years, that's the small amounts that we have to put into there. Which brings us to the total expenses of 8.7 to cover for the expenses that we showed. So it seems like a dooms picture, but for me, I see it as a positive, because when we started a few years ago, we started with cleanup about where expenses are and where revenues are, and are we charging the right expenses to the right fund to be able to charge the proper rate to the proper fund or the proper company. Then we came to fixed rate, where we try to stabilize. It didn't fix the problem, but at least we were stabilizing a status that we could plan ahead about how much revenue we could generate from the utility fund, and not have the fluctuation in what to expect depending on the weather or how it went that summer. And now we're at a place where we're trying to put something in place for solving issues. At the very least, try to invest in this system. So for me, it seems like a doomsday, but for me it's positive, because it's a growth in where we've started a few years ago and where we are now to try to resolve everything. Something a lot more fun, though. The general capital fund, the investments that we will be doing in the municipality, we have $1.2 million that will go for renovating the Roussel O'Neill complex. So as you saw, we are recruiting more police officers. We took over the Ward 2's RCMP protective services, which are now the Bathurst Police Force responsibility. So with that means more space. But remember that we did have massive savings by delivering the services ourselves instead of paying the RCMP for doing it. So the payback on that investment is quite quick, 3 to 4 years. And we will be paying cash for that as well. So we're not going to pay interest on it. We have the storage application for the police station, which is an appliance that all the data is stored for the police. And we do need to keep those replacement because it is such an important component of the IT building that they do have there. As part of the regular fleet for the police officers, they have 2 vehicles that we have to change every year as part of the rotation. This year they are due for 1 unmarked police vehicle at $65,000 and 1 marked with equipment at $90,000. The fire service truck that is shown here is for the fire chief's current vehicle will be repurposed as medical call response vehicle to save fuel costs and wear and tear on larger unit. So the new unit will be 4x4 with ground clearance required to respond to sites such as the mill site or the ATV trails. Then we do have the lighting controller at the Casey Irving Center. So if people don't know, right now the system that we do have there did fail already and is handled by manual relays. And so any further deterioration will mean that the lights at the KCI won't be able to operate. So the lights will go out. So we do need to change the controller, and it will cost $120,000. As part of the Casey Irving as well, we have a Monter wheel that is an essential piece of the dehumidification system at the Casey Irving system, and the one that we have there is at the current end of life, so it's around $45,000. Then we have an infrastructure, in our recreational infrastructure, 2 buildings where we will be investing in the roof for the shingles. So the first one are our waterfront properties. So we have a few ones that are in worse shape than others. So the more pressing one, we will invest in the roof for $50,000, and the rest will be looked at for 2027. But the biggest investment in roof is for the aquatic center, where we did acquire in 2026. So this $400,000 that is shown there for the full roof is contingent on us receiving the RDC funding, where we're hoping we would receive 40% of the funding for it. So if we don't receive the funding for it, we might reduce the scope of what we're able to do to fix the roof. But if we do get the funding, we would do the full roof for $400,000, which would stop the leaking in the pool. Hopefully, I hope. We have a sidewalk tractor and sidewalk salt tractor for $200,000 and $30,000 respectively. And these machinery are, the sidewalk tractor would replace the 2003 trackless that is no longer operational and required to clean snow on the sidewalks, as well as sweep. And then we have the sidewalk trailer that would replace the trackless tractor that it's at the end of life and is no longer rebuildable, because believe it or not, we have rebuilt it a few times, or not me because I can't rebuild anything except Legos. But the team has rebuilt it quite a bit, and they can't anymore. It's like it's done. So unless you buy them a Lego set, it won't work. As part of the fleet, we have quite an old fleet, so we do have to replace a few trucks every year. So this, we will be looking at a half-ton truck for their operations at $65,000. And then for roads, which is always the most exciting to present for the community, is we have $491,000 as part of DTI funding. So it is combined. The project is much bigger than that. But our portion would be $491,000 for Route 134, Miramichi Avenue, from Bridge Street to Mont Carmel. And then we have Daniel Drive, where if you've driven there lately, there's development in that area, and the road is quite magane, yes. So there's an investment of $225 that would go from Vanier to Ulrich and a section of Riverbank, and this would include pulverized grade, paved ditching, and driveway culvert. And then the next one, everybody would probably be happy because we have Ryan Road for $500,000 on there. So anybody that's been driving is a nice smooth surface that comes right in between, and then you fall and you finish, you get, oh shoot, it was so nice. Well, we have money that we will be able to finish from both sides of Ryan Road for the full $500,000. So when you get on Ryan Road from Vanier right up to St. Anne, it will actually be smooth all the way. How do we pay for that? Initially we had a budget of $2 million when we started. We have cash plan from accumulated debt savings that we reinvest right back into the capital investments. That amount was $950,000. Then we had cash from the 2024 surplus that we rounded to $650,000, and we had planned to borrow long-term financing for $400,000 for the Miramichi Avenue project. To that, when we started doing the work sessions, we added, with council's recommendations, tourism accommodation levy money for the recreational infrastructure, so that we're able to invest in our recreational buildings and have people come in. So we have $150,000 from that. Then, as I mentioned, we plan on transferring money by the end of this year to our reserves. And so we would be taking money out to pay and increase the 2026 budget, as not just spending it for anything just to finish the year, but actually investing it in the needs. So that gave us 561 more. And then, as we said, also the aquatic center, we're hoping to get 40% funding for that. So that's 160. And then, as part of a new provincial government funding, we have the capital renewal funding from the CRF, which gives us $744,000 additional money that we would normally not get. And that funding is the one that Mr. Abernathy in his presentation was referring to, where the formula takes the net value of assets and versus the investments that we're in it. So the more we invest in our asset and we take care of them, the more that we hope that the baseline in the financial statement that they take can actually improve that number. But for 2026, we have $744,000 for that, which gives us a total capital budget for that fund of $3.6 million, when in the beginning we had started with $2 million. So I was quite happy with that. Utility fund, fortunately, with $750,000, can't do much. When you have the Middle River Intake Gallery rebuild, that will be a budget of $520,000. And that money is the existing intake has surpassed the useful life. It is required to ensure proper maintenance can be completed, and currently 2 of the 5 valves are not operational. So we do need to take care of that intake gallery. Then we have the arc flash upgrade at the wastewater treatment plant for $125,000. And this is recommended in the arc flash study to ensure a safe working environment around electrical equipment, and the project is to be completed in 2 phases. We have the PLC replacement at $40,000, and the current PLCs are obsolete and support will end. So there are many units to replace, because we have units in the water treatment plant, the wastewater treatment plant, and various lift stations. So this is a multi-year project. So you'll see that in multiple years. The SLS backup pump for $65,000. The backup pump is for critical lift stations due to extend lead time or pump orders. This spare pump will allow us to minimize sewage overflows in the event of pump failure. And of course, unfortunately, we have to borrow for the full amount because we do not have money available to pay cash right now. That's what we want to do by putting money aside and start building a fund with that 2.5% capital investment, because right now we will have a budget of $750. We'll borrow for it. We will reimburse it, but with interest. So that will eat away at the expenses. As we said, we already have over $2 million in debt reimbursement per year that we repay instead of investing in new ones. So to summarize, we've went through the 4 budgets. We really made sure that the money invested was in the targeted areas of the strategic plan and ensure stability in services, whether it be in the general fund because of the assessment freeze, or the utility fund by having a plan to prevent unsafe drinking water. As we continue growing, as we invest in economic development and make financially aware decisions that are sustainable, we are now able to invest in increased services for citizens. And if you listen to all the budget speech, I know it's long, I love it, I'm motivated by it, but not everybody is sometimes, I get it. You can see that we have road investments, recreational infrastructure investments, including a study for the Coronation Park for community life to citizens. We are supporting transportation services to citizens. We are actively working on our legal requirements with the municipal plan review. We have an engaged police force by their programs they want to provide to the community, not just the presence of police in our streets, but by their involvement with our community. We have fire prevention mindfulness and fire volunteer focus, and let's not forget our first responders' mental health. With a strategic plan, it becomes easy to simply associate the costing of it besides it and not waste money that is not priority. This is how we were able to deliver the budget, even with the assessment freeze occurring. Yes, the utility fund is in difficulty, but with the work we've been putting in the past years, which, as I said, it is cleanup, it is stabilization, and there's been hard times. But we are now at the point where we can start looking at future problems instead of fixing old ones. Everything that we've shown in this budget has shown where we come from and where we are actually going in the future. So circling back, operating budgets, we have $49,446,591. I won't name the cents. They have the capital budgets at $4.3 million for a total budget of $53,812,413. Whoop. And with this, we have gone around the 4 budgets, and we're ready to deposit them for budget resolutions. Thank you to all managers that took part in all budget submission, because we do start in June to talk about budgets, and then we have working sessions in August and submissions, and then we have the working sessions that were made public in October to bring us to this night. And then thank you for council for clear objectives of what service delivery and priorities they wanted for 2026. It made the whole process easier. So thank you very much.
All right, on a des questions. Conseiller Leblanc.
Merci, Madame la mairesse. Merci, Sonia. En 2021, ce conseil ici a commencé. On avait dans l'idée de faire beaucoup de transformations. Et tu nous as donné tes idées. Et puis qui se tenaient. Et qu'on voyait, je pense, chacun de nous, on voyait ton aide, ton implication à nous aider à apporter la ville jusqu'à aller aujourd'hui et jusqu'à s'en va dans l'avenir. C'est pour ça que j'apprécie grandement. Mais j'aimerais juste revenir sur une chose que tu as mentionnée tantôt. Je vais le dire en anglais. Tu as dit, I can't build nothing. I'd like to correct that. So far, you've basically rebuilt the total budget of Bathurst and really helped us move into the next century. And you're helping future generations. So, yeah, you can build quite a bit. Just be sure of that. Thank you.
Well said.
Thank you.
That's it.
Councillor Burnett.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Thanks for the budget, and thanks for everybody that was involved in it. You know, it's amazing what municipal government provides every day for the well-being of our citizens and our communities. And we have federal government, provincial government, but municipal government is the government that's closest to the people. And you have put together quite a budget. It just went on and on and on for quite a few meetings. My question is the emergency funds. If we have a hard winter with a lot of water breaks and that, how much have you planned in order to handle that? Because winter's starting off cold. I hope it doesn't get any colder, but it probably will. So do you have a good contingency plan there for emergencies?
All right, Mr. Pettigrew. Madame Gauvin.
So the first part is for emergency fund, we're limited at 5% of the previous year budget. So let's round it at 8 million. 5% is about $450,000 as an emergency fund. We're about max that. We won't be able to put more into that one. So that would that would be the contingencies that would have access to on the operating side if it happened on the utility. General fund side for snow removal, we do have close to $1 million. That one, I'm hoping that it's not that storm that ends the world, so that would empty that pot. So general fund would be covered. Utility fund, if there was a major break, then we would have to look into it. We'd be maxed at 450, but I'm sure Mr. Abernathy on the operations side would hopefully have better ways of depleting our emergency fund. I'm hoping.
Well,
Maybe him.
people in Montreal got a taste of winter this past weekend. I hope we don't, compared to what I saw there in television. The other one is we've taken on the aquatic center. I'm really glad to see in the budget for repairing the whole roof, not just part of it. But that's an old building with a lot of water in it, a lot of plumbing. Do we have an emergency fund in case we have to replace some plumbing all of a sudden to keep that building open?
Mr. Pettigrew?
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Abernathy?
Thank you, Your Worship. So that would also fall underneath our general operating reserve fund. So I believe there's around $1 million in that fund right now. Short answer to your question, yes, we do have the reserves available. I don't think we're maxed out in our reserve, but we have a healthy reserve. So if something does go sideways at the aquatic center, we do have the reserve available. Yeah.
Thank you. That's all I have.
All right.
And thanks for the budget.
All right. No other question. Merci, Madame Gauvin. Thank you to you and your team. I know we've had long meetings to review everything, but the fact that if we look at the last 5-7 years and what we've shaved off our budget and where we are financially, and the fact that we were able to invest $3.6 million in a lot of the work, and first, I know we did not talk about the McFlurry, but yes, it's being built next year. We're in the process of doing that as well. But we've come a long way on where we are today. And I know we have to go through the whole project now, and we have to go to vote. And I know that a lot of citizens may not be happy with the water and sewer rate, but it's the reality, and we're not the only ones. It's across the province of New Brunswick. Everybody is in the same boat. And it's certainly unfortunate, but it was very well explained that the reason behind it. And sometimes this council has to make very difficult decisions, and it's not easy ones, but it is what it is, and we have to move forward, and we have to continue in this city, to grow. So, merci beaucoup pour la présentation, puis très détaillée. Merci. Bon, okay. Now we got a lot of resolutions. On a plusieurs résolutions. Ms. Parker, are you ready? She's got a lot of reading to do. Okay. On va aller au 7.1 des finances, total des comptes fournisseurs pour le mois d'octobre 2025. So, account payable total for October 2025. Ms. Parker.
That the accounts payable totals, including payroll, for the month of October 2025 be approved as follows. Operating, $1,328,854. Capital, $441,143. For a total of $3,484,626.
All right, I'll need someone to move. Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Willett. Before we go to the vote, Mr. Pettigrew? Oh, yes, I'll give you the mic. There we go.
Thank you, Your Worship. The following is a summary of disbursements for both the operating and the capital funds for the month of October 2025. In the capital fund, RH Fournette Trucking Limited received a payment of $364,919 for Schiller Street upgrades. Roy Consultants Limited received a payment of $57,905 for consulting services on various projects. And various vendors received payments of $18,319 for expenses on other capital projects, for a total in the capital fund of $441,143. The operating fund payments to Company 766431 NB Inc. for $120,000 for incentive housing accelerator funds. Brentag Canada Inc. received a payment of $17,290 for chlorine cylinders. Schiller Regional Service Commission received a payment of $93,674 for quarter 4 contributions, which include our garbage, recycling, sludge tipping fees. Irving Energy received a payment of $29,692 for bulk diesel and oil. Camille Doucette received a payment of $40,000 for incentive and housing accelerator funds. McLennan Sales received a payment of $19,239 for plumbing supplies. NB Power received a payment of $175,327 for electricity. O'Brien Material Handling Inc. received a payment of $18,789 for fleet stock items. Robichaud and Burrito Contracteurs Limité received a payment of $20,240 for refuse collections in Ward 2 in the LSDs. St. Isidore Asphalt Limited received a payment of $76,312 for miscellaneous aggregates. Promoters settlements for ticket sales of $27,221. Other recurring payments of $691,071 for various recurrent invoices, including animal control, repairs and supplies. for a total of $1,328,854 in the operating fund. Total payroll for 5 pay periods was $1,714,629 for a total in the month of October of $3,484,626. That's my report, Your Worship.
All right, do we have any questions? No? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. We're going to go under budget. 7.21, operation budget, general operating funds. Ms. Parker.
That pursuant to subsection 99(2) of the Local Governance Act, the total budget for the General Operating Fund for 2026 consists of a total revenues of $40,693,066 and a total expenditures of $40,693,066, and that it be approved as follows. Revenues, property tax warrant, $28,533,643. Community funding and equalization grant, $4,588,861. Local taxes, $250,000. Services provided to other governments, $2,546,272. Sales of services, $1,331,378. Other revenue from owned sources, $614,199. Other government transfers, $895,167. Other transfers, $1,933,546 for a total revenue of $40,693,066. Expenditures, general government services, $7,023,600. Protective services, $13,764,413. Transportation services, $6,744,150. Environmental health services, $574,705. Environmental development services, $2,536,265. Recreational and cultural services, $5,164,705. Fiscal services, $4,885,228. Other services, none, for a total expense of $40,693,066.
All right, I'll need someone to move. Deputy Mayor Knowles, seconded by Councillor Legacy. Questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Utility Operation Fund. Ms. Parker.
That pursuant to subsection 117(4) of the Local Governance Act, the total budget for the Utility Operating Fund for 2026 consists of total revenues of $8,753,525 and total expenditures of $8,753,525, and that it be approved as follows. Revenues, sale of services, $7,916,900. Other revenue from owned sources, $809,661. Other government transfers, none. Other transfers, $26,964 for a total revenue of $8,753,525. Expenditures, environmental health services, $6,051,443. Fiscal services, $2,702,082 for a total expense of $8,753,525.
All right, I'll need someone to move in second. Councillor Branch, seconded by Councillor Burnett. Ready for the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, warrant of assessment, 7.2.1.3. Ms. Parker.
Whereas, Council approved the sum of $40,693,066 as the total general operating fund budget of the municipality, and whereas, the sum of $7,570,562 represents non-tax revenue, and whereas, the sum of $4,588,861 represents the sum of the fiscal capacity funding, and whereas the sum of $28,533,643 represents the warrant of the municipality, and whereas the tax rates for the Bathurst be listed as follows. Taxing Authority Number 962.01, residential assessment of 87,258,200, non-residential assessment 250,900, nothing in heavy industrial, tax base of 87,684,730 for a warrant of $884,437 with a residential rate of 0.9676, non-residential rate of 1.6449, and heavy industrial rate of 1.6449. Taxing Authority Number 962.02, residential assessment 132,553,300, non-residential assessment 11,731,000, heavy industrial assessment nothing. Tax base of $152,496 for a warrant of $1,462,437, residential rate of 0.9590, non-residential rate of 1.6303, and heavy industrial rate of 1.6303. Taxing Authority Number 962.03 for a residential assessment $1,120,528,800. Non-residential assessment, $219,791,800. Heavy industrial assessment as none. For a tax base of $1,494,174,860. For a warrant of $26,222,769. Residential rate 1.7550. Non-residential rate 2.9835. Heavy industrial rate 2.935. For a total residential assessment of $1,340,340,300, non-residential assessment total $231,773,700, total tax base $1,734,355,590 for a warrant total of $28,533,643. Now therefore be it resolved that Council orders and directs the levying by the Minister of Environmental and Local Governments of said amount on real property liable to taxation under the Assessment Act within the City of Bathurst.
All right, I'll need someone to move. Councillor Scary, seconded by Councillor Legacy. Okay, Scary and Legacy, that is a lot. All right, we'll go to the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Motion carried. Yes, good job. All right. OK. On s'en va sur budget d'immobilisation, fonds d'immobilisation générale. So capital budget, general capital fund. Ms. Parker.
Whereas the Municipal Council has considered and reviewed a 5-year municipal capital plan, now therefore be it resolved that the 2026 capital budget be approved as follows. Under General Capital Fund, Roussel O'Neill renovations, Phase 2, $1,200,000. Storage array, Bathurst Police, $45,000. Police vehicle unmarked, $65,000. Police vehicle marked with equipment, $90,000. Fire services truck, 4x4, $90,000. Route 134, Miramichi Avenue, $491,000. Other roads, $725,000. Half-ton truck for parks operations, $65,000. Sidewalk cleaner, $200,000. Sidewalk trailer, $30,000. Lighting controls, $120,000. Waterfront building roofing, $50,000. Aquatic center roofing, $400,000. Munter wheel, $44,822. For a total of $3,615,822. Funding, Municipal Capital Borrowing Board for $400,000.
All right, I'll need someone to move. Someone to second. Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Willett. Ready for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose. Motion carried. OK. Je me suis, je veux juste faire certain que je ne me perds pas dans toutes ces feuilles-ci. Fonds d'immobilisation pour eau et égout, Water and Sewer Capital Fund. Ms. Parker, are you okay, or do you want to take a break? You're good? Okay.
Whereas the Municipal Council has considered and reviewed a 5-year capital improvement program for water and sewer funds, now therefore be it resolved that the 2026 Utility Capital Fund budget be approved as follows. Underwater, Middle River Intake Gallery rebuild, $520,000. Siemens PLC replacement, $40,000. Under sewer, arc flash upgrades, $125,000. SLS spare pump, $65,000. Underwater and sewer, none. Funding Municipal Capital Boring Board, $750,000.
All right, I'll need someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Mayor Noel, seconded by Councillor Legacy. Ready for the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose? Motion carried. OK. Je vais juste déménager ma feuille, faire certain que je suis à la bonne place. OK. On s'en va à la Commission des emprunts de capitaux par les municipalités. So, Municipal Capital Borrowing Board, 7.2.2.3.1, application for authorization. Ms. Parker.
That the municipality of the City of Bathurst submits to the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board an application for authorization to borrow money or to guarantee the repayment of money borrowed or to enter into a lease purchase, or purchase agreement in the amount not to exceed $1,150,000 for the following. For engineering purpose, Route 134 Miramichi Avenue, under function Transportation Services, for the amount of $400,000 for a term of 10 years. Under Water and Sewer Capital Fund, Machines and Equipment, SLS spare pump, under Environmental Health Services, in the amount of $65,000 for a term of 10 years. Siemens PLC replacement, under Environmental Health Services, for an amount of $40,000 for a term of 10 years. Engineering, arc flash upgrades, under Environmental Health Services, for a total of $125,000 for a term of 10 years. Middle River Intake Gallery rebuild, under Environmental Health Services, $520,000 for a term of 10 years. Nothing under vehicles. This application is made pursuant to Section 1.1 or subsection 4.1 or Section 1.1 and subsection 4.1 of the Municipal Capital Borrowing Act and a resolution of Council of the City of Bathurst on November 17, 2025.
All right, I'll need someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Branch, seconded by Councillor Burnett. Ready for the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose? Motion carried. Are you still ready? Good to go? You want to? All right. So we're going to the application. Ms. Parker.
That the municipality of Bathurst submits to the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board an application for authorization to borrow money or to guarantee the repayment of money borrowed or to enter into lease purchase, or purchase agreement in an amount not to exceed $1,150,000 for the following. Under General Capital Fund Transportation Services, $400,000. For a total in General Capital Fund of $400,000. Under Water and Sewer Capital Fund, Environmental Health Services, $750,000 for a total Water and Sewer Capital Fund of $750,000 for a grand total of $1,150,000. At a rate of interest to be determined by the New Brunswick Municipal Finance Corporation at the time of the issue of debentures and not exceeding the Charters Bank prime lending rate of an interim bank loan for a period not exceeding 10 years by way of loan, issue of debentures, or to guarantee repayment of a loan, issue of debentures, or certificate of indebtedness made for a capital expense as set forth in subsection 1 of section 4 of the Municipal Capital Borrowing Act, as authorized by a vote of council of said municipality under date November 17, 2025.
All right, I'll need someone to move, someone to second. Councillor Legacy, seconded by Councillor Anderson. Ready for the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose? Motion carried. We are going to 7.2.3, modification of Schedule A of Bylaw 2024-01, a bylaw respecting water and sewer services and charges in the City of Bathurst. Ms. Parker.
Whereas Bylaw 2024-01, a bylaw respecting water and sewer services and charges in the City of Bathurst, includes Schedule A, which outlines water and sewer services rates, and whereas City Engineer Matthew Abernathy presented the Status of Utility Network and Recommendations Report, which outlined the condition of the city's water and sewer infrastructure and recommended rate adjustments to support sustainable operations and capital improvements, and whereas The report recommends annual rate increases of 5% over the next 5 years to ensure the long-term financial stability of the utility system, and whereas Council is committed to implementing a sustainable approach to water and sewer rate adjustments over the next 5 years to ensure the ongoing maintenance and improvement of the utility system, and whereas it is necessary to update Schedule A to reflect the revised rates for 2026, be it resolved that 1. Schedule A of Bylaw 2024-01 be amended to revise the Schedule of Water Charges, Sections 1 and 2, and the Schedule of Sanitary Sewerage Charges, Section 1, to reflect an increase of 5%, and 2. Section 8 of Schedule A be updated to state that any property owner who requests that their water meter be checked or twinned shall be responsible for all costs associated with the service, and that the city shall invoice the owner for the amount billed by the company performing the work. And 3, the updated Schedule A shall come into effect on January 1st, 2026.
All right, I'll need someone to move, someone to second. Councillor Branch, seconded by Councillor Scary. We're going to go to the question. None. We're going to go to the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Motion carried. Municipal bylaws. Proposed municipal and zoning bylaw amendment for 1058 Roy Lane. Third reading of bylaw 2025-08Z. Ms. Parker.
That bylaw 2025-08Z, entitled A Bylaw to Amend Bylaw 2008-01, entitled The City of Bathurst Zoning Bylaw, be read for the third time by title.
All right, I'll need someone to move. Councillor Willett, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. Ready for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Motion carried. Okay. Draft resolution. Adoption of restriction and condition pursuant to Section 59 of the Community Planning Act. So 9.11 for the property located at 1058 Roy Lane. Ms. Parker.
Whereas the municipality has received a request from the owner to amend the zoning of parcel bearing PID 209-31325 to allow the development of a mini-home, and whereas the council intends to adopt bylaw number 2025-08Z to permit this development as a conditional rezoning pursuant to Section 59 of the Community Planning Act, and whereas the council wants to add terms and conditions through a conditional rezoning agreement attached to bylaw number 2025-08Z to ensure once the rezoning is completed that the parcel is developed in accordance with the terms and conditions listed in the agreement, and whereas subsection 59.2 of the Community Planning Act stipulates that this agreement, once entered into, will only take effect after certified copies of the rezoning bylaw and the agreement are filed in the Land Registration Office. Now therefore be it resolved that the following terms and conditions be imposed on the parcel. 1. In addition to the uses normally permitted in the R21 zone, it will be permitted to develop a mini-home on the property bearing PID 209-31325. 2. The type of building and the layout of the site must be consistent with the plans submitted by the owner with its rezoning application. Any significant changes to these plans will have to be approved by the Planning Advisory Committee. 3. All provisions of the zoning bylaw continue to apply. 4. The above-mentioned terms and conditions are binding upon the parties, their administrators, officers, hears, and assigns. 5. On the rezoning of the land in the zone, and any building or structure on the land shall not be developed or used except in accordance with the conditional rezoning agreement, the terms and conditions imposed, and the time limits prescribed. 6. The parties acknowledge having read the contents of the document and declare having signed it.
All right, I'll need someone to move. Councillor Legacies, followed or seconded by Deputy Mayor Knowles. Ready for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Motion carried. 9.2. Payment of invoice town suite. Ms. Parker.
That members of council authorize a payment of $134,902.71 plus tax to Town Suite for the 2026 annual subscription invoice.
All right, I'll need someone to move. Someone's Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Branch. Ready for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Motion carried. 9.3. P002-25 splash pad upgrades. Ms. Parker.
That proposal P002-25 splash pad upgrades be awarded to ABC Recreation for a total of $399,991.13 plus tax.
All right, I'll need someone to move in second. Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Anderson. Ready for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Motion carried. Of course, Councillor Anderson, I was going to give it to you. I know, we are very happy. Children will be happy as well. That Coronation Park is unbelievable how much it's used. It's unbelievable. It's so nice to see it. So 9.4 Q 017-25 modular housing, water and AMP sewer services and site work. Ms. Parker.
That quote Q017-25 modular housing, water and sewer services and site work be awarded to Tristan's Excavation in the amount of $104,687.25 plus tax.
All right, now need someone to move. Councillor Legacy, seconded by Councillor Burnett. Ready for the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose? Motion carried. There. Ms. Parker, do we have any administrative report?
There are no reports from administration or committees.
All right, Mayor report, we'll do it at the next meeting because we still have another meeting after this meeting, so we'll go straight to the adjournment of the meeting. Ms. Parker.
That the regular public meeting be adjourned at 8:25 p.m.
All right. Moved by Deputy Mayor Knowles, seconded by Councillor Scary. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose, motion carried. Merci d'être avec nous ce soir. Thank you for being here with us this evening. Have a good evening.